Let's get ready to rumble. That was not the best announcement, but it's okay. Today we have two dynamic broadcast-style microphones, one made in the UK and the other made in a country that is a former penal colony of His Majesty. And in my opinion, both mics are designed with the same target customer in mind, that is the content creator, because they want these mics to look good and they want these mics to sound good. And I think these mics meet that mark. So the podcast came out in 2018, and I don't have any sales data on this mic, but it seems like it's almost ubiquitous. This mic, the Sontronics Podcast Pro, came out in 2020, and I don't really see these around. Why? Is that because these Sontronics cost more, or is it simply a case of Rode having out-engineered Sontronics 2 years earlier? To find out, I'll compare both of these microphones, first dry with no processing, and then with a Cloudlifter CL-X. And finally, I'll compare them with the CL-X plus EQ and compression. And at the end, I will tell you what I think about both microphones. Let's go. A brief disclaimer, I am not a shill. I purchased both mics with my own cash, and I'm not compensated by anybody. All opinions, experiences, and BS are mine. Positive opinions and suggestions do not constitute an endorsement. A lack of a suggestion is not a sign of a deficiency. And this video is for entertainment purposes only. It may contain errors. Let's keep moving. This is the dry sound of the Podcast Pro. Right away, we can tell this is a very warm sounding microphone with a nice roll off in the bottom end. It's a really nice bottom. It's a flattering sound for those of us with a less than flattering voice. The sound of this mic, I fell in love with it right away, but I did notice the dynamics are a bit jumpy and this mic is a bit plosive prone, even with the built-in pop filter that they claim it has. So let me demonstrate. Peter Piper picked a pick of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a pick of pickled peppers. So if you talk across the mic, it's going to be less plosive prone, which is normal for any dynamic mic. But this thing doesn't even have an option for an external pop filter, so just be careful. Plosives aside, the Podcast Pro tends to make the room echo disappear quite a bit, and that's a really important thing when you're working at home. Most of our spaces are less than ideal, and if you have to wonder if your space is less than ideal, it probably is less than ideal. I'm not exactly sure how this mic achieves that room sound rejection, but I believe it's because it is a super cardioid microphone, and in being so, you do need to be careful when you move around as much as I do sometimes. So don't be moving around when you're trying to record because it's going to be kind of weird. Your volume is going to be all over the place. It's really sensitive, so just stay still. The quoted frequency response of this microphone is a very conventional 50 to 15K, and it has a quoted sensitivity of 50 dBV, which is a good bit more than the old PodMic. And that allows you to keep the gain in a reasonable range. I've got mine set to about 60% on the SSL2, and I don't have any real appreciable noise as a result of that. Build quality. It is a good build quality. However, it is not a heavy build. It does not feel like you could kill somebody with it by throwing it at them. It's going to make them mad. This is going to do the job. So when you tap on this thing, it is a little more, I don't know, dead than I thought it would be given the light build. And the noise transferred from the desk, not terrible, pretty darn good. And now I'm on the Rode PodMic, and right away you will notice it sounds way brighter than this thing, even more so when you're on axis. I have a real love-hate thing with this mic, and one of the reasons is because it is a bit hypey. The PodMic has an internal pop filter just like the Podcast Pro, but I do think an external pop filter would go a long way towards calming this mic down. And Rode started selling a pop filter in different colors when they released the USB PodMic, so I think they kind of agree. And another thing I notice about the PodMic is that it tends to pick up more of the room than this mic does, and that drives me bonkers. I mean, it's just really bad about that. Now, you can dial both the high end and the room echo out in post-processing, but it's another step you got to take. And depending upon how much room noise you have, you may not be able to fix it without significantly degrading your recording. But that is a small complaint that doesn't bother most folks for whatever reason. Getting on to better things, the build quality of the PodMic is nuts. It's dense, it's heavy, it feels like a solid piece of metal. It's so much more substantial than this mic, and this thing costs 60% or $60 less than this mic. Tapping on the top, kind of dead, kind of not dead. That sounds kind of ringy-dingy, doesn't it? Tapping on the desk. Yeah, the desk is maybe a little bit more transferred than this, or maybe they're about the same. I don't think it's enough to really matter. Just be careful when you're using either mic. Spec-wise, the PodMic has the same frequency response quoted as the Podcast Pro, but the sensitivity is noticeably lower, and that shows up when I dial the gain in. I've got the gain set to about 75% or so, which is significantly more by about 15% than this mic. Still, I've got plenty of gain on tap, and it's not that big of a deal. Okay, now we have an inline preamp connected to the PodMic Pro, and one thing I'm noticing is that I can seem to hear a bit more high-end now than I could before. Maybe it's just in my mind, but I feel like I can hear myself better. I am using the Cloudlifter CL-X, which is a really interesting inline preamp that features 2 gain settings and a Cinemag transformer. Is that how you say that? So it's a bit different than the CL-1. I have the preamp on the low gain setting because it's enough to get the job done, enough to impart the sound of the transformer, and I hope the slightly lower gain setting will produce less noise in the recording. And I really need to make a dummy mic plug so I can test that theory out, and I'll get around to it. Maybe I can tell the difference with this mic. Maybe I can't. Maybe it's all in my head. Now I'm on the PodMic with the CL-X preamp inline, and I've always felt the PodMic really benefited from a preamp. Usually I would be using a Fethead, but I'm trying out new things today, so the CL-X is in the mix. And I feel like the CL-X does tend to hype the top even more than this mic does without it. Maybe it's all in my head. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Does this thing sound better with the preamp than without the preamp, or is it about the same? Back on the Podcast Pro, and I know from testing this mic prior to this video that this mic really likes having a bit of EQ added to it, particularly in the top, just to help degauze your ears. Also, I've notched out a small amount of lower mids to try to clean up some of the resonance in my voice. And I'm running some mild compression to help level out the dynamics a bit. I'll put the details in the lower third, and y'all give me some kudos here because I have to really show self-control. I really want to smash that compression and get all up in there like an 80s FM DJ, but you know, I'm not really good at it. In addition to those adjustments, I'm using some voice oscillation in Final Cut, or some de-reverb if you will, to help bring the room noise down a bit. You're going to notice it more in this mic than in this mic. And I'm also using a D-Click from iZotope to help manage mouth sounds because they really tend to pop out when you dial in the compression. Now let's hear the PodMic with the same suite of adjustments that I used on this mic. I'm using the same compressor settings as before, and again, I'll put those details up on the screen now. I'm also using the same D-Reverb settings and the same D-Click settings to get rid of mouth noises. I've only touched the EQ lightly as I really struggle with EQing this mic. It's kind of hard to improve on in some ways, and in other ways it's kind of hard to shape. Some mics, like the PD-70 and the SM7B, are pretty easy to EQ, but I really struggle with this one for whatever reason. So what do I think about these two microphones? Well, the build quality trophy goes to the PodMic, no contest. It's not to say that the Podcast Pro is built poorly, but you're going to want to be careful with it. Yeah, just be careful with it. However, the PodMic comes with a 10-year warranty, and Sontronics gives you a lifetime warranty, so I'll just pause and let that soak in for a minute. Looks-wise, now this is really subjective. The PodMic is easy to love, but I feel like the Podcast Pro gets the nod here because it just looks kind of steampunkish. Looks like something that somebody would build to order, and I kind of dig that boutique vibe this mic gives off. It's really sexy, especially in this G'd up gold color. Yeah! Feature-wise, these two mics are about the same. They both have internal pop filters. They're both kind of, similar aesthetic. But I'm going to give the nod here simply because it has a stronger output that is significantly stronger, and I feel like that's going to be more friendly to more preamps around the world. Sound quality wise, I feel like the Sontronics pips the Rode mic in sound quality just because it sounds better in my ears with a tiny bit of shelf EQ. And Y'all, neither of these mics takes significant EQ well, at least with my amateur EQ skills. I can take an SM7B or a PD-70 and really dial it in with EQ. I struggle with both of these mics to make them sound better, and I end up, especially with this one, making it sound worse. Also, circling back to that room noise rejection thing, I really prefer it here. It's less to do in post, and that means you're going to get more done, and you're going to have a better output having done it. Value-wise, I think this is a draw. It's even. This mic is 60% or $60 cheaper in the United States. It's built heavier. It looks about as good as this thing. It comes in a couple different colors if you look. Check out Sweetwater, check out B&H. But the Sontronics mic has a lifetime warranty versus a 10-year warranty. This thing comes in 7 colors and it rejects more of the room. Is it worth 60% more? I don't know. I think it is, but it's not by much. And look, to be fair, there are other mics that cost less and do a similar job rejecting the room sound. See the Zoom ZDM1. So y'all, that is it for this video. Please smash that like button and let me know in the comments which mic you prefer. And if you tried both, I want to hear what you thought about them. Did your thoughts sound about like mine? Until next time, y'all, ciao.